How might your life have been different if there was a religion for you? A religion that affirmed you as a woman, as equal to man and made in the image of God. A religion that acknowledged your menstrual cycle as a sacred part of creation, your body and sexuality blessed, and validated the feminine voice of God as the most highest, and the care and sustainability of natural resources and non-human life as the highest goal of mankind. How might your life have been different? Welcome to Heretica, her eco-feminist theology educational podcast. My name is Elena and I am the podcast creator. Hello and welcome to my new podcast exploring religion and pro-choice and pro-life narratives. Please do subscribe at theologyofher.substack.com. In my previous podcast on how the sexual revolution joined the feminist revolution, I explored how the relationship between Betty Friedan, author of The Feminine Mystique, which sparked the second wave of feminism, and her friend Larry Lader, author of Abortion, came together to eventually legalize abortion by persuading Betty to include pro-abortion support into NOW, the National Organization for Women. I liken this to a patriarchal feminism, a term coined by eco-feminist Ivone Guevara, a Brazilian Catholic nun, whereby the decision was based on an androcentric model of theology and simply included women in it. As a consequence, religion was used to change sexual morals by stating how the church, this patriarchal institution, is holding you back from your freedom, legalizing abortion being women's way to freedom. I feel women should have and still need to explore the deeper meaning of religion and freedom from their own lived experience and see how abortion fits into it. For this episode, I want to explore pro-choice versus pro-life from a religious perspective. First, some facts. According to the World Health Organization, around 73 million induced abortions take place worldwide each year. Induced abortion is the intentional, medical, or surgical termination of pregnancy for any reason. 6 out of 10 unintended pregnancies end up in abortion. The popular pro-choice slogan is "My body, my choice." But how does the statistic sound to you? 73 million induced abortions take place worldwide each year. It is a lot, and perhaps we need to rethink the way we view abortion. I personally consider abortion stats to be alarming, and while I lean more towards pro-life, I have had a hard time reconciling pregnancy as a result of rape as one example. But what do pro-life Catholics say about that from a religious perspective? It proclaims that human life is a precious gift from God. It defends human life at all stages, and "My body for you" is a pro-life message, where a woman will choose the life of her child no matter what, over aborting it. But what do they say about rape? A paper by Sandra Mahon, who is a family physician and former counselor for sexual assault victims, says, even among those who are pro-life, some individuals are tempted to condone aborting children conceived from rape out of a natural empathy for the rape victim. Rape is an evil act. Since pregnancy from rape can seem to compound and prolong the victim's anguish, some believe that abortion will permit the rape victim to begin healing earlier. There is no normal reaction to rape. As with other highly traumatic experiences, an individual's response is unpredictable. A myriad of reactions, depression, anger, anxiety, fear of retaliation, guilt, desire for revenge, humiliation, disbelief are some of the short-term and long-term psychological reactions to rape. So what is the response to pregnancy as a result of rape? Rape victims may respond in a variety of ways on learning they are pregnant. Anger, fear, anxiety, depression, complacency, and anything else you can imagine. Family and friends often feel helpless or are uncomfortable and embarrassed. Advice such as "you have to put this behind you, and it's best not to dwell on what happened," may make recovery particularly difficult for a pregnant rape victim. Such advice does not express empathy for the victim, nor respect for the child in the event of pregnancy. The abortion solution? Abortion advocates perpetuate the myth that pregnant rape victims generally desire abortion, and this makes it difficult for women to choose the life-giving alternative for their child. We must not forget that pregnant rape victims aren't suddenly separated from the person they were before the rape. They bring to this difficult journey their beliefs, their sense of right and wrong, and everything else that they are. In a survey I conducted of counseling agencies assisting women with problem pregnancies, therapists identified 37 women who had reported a rape-related pregnancy. Of them, 28 continued their pregnancy, 5 chose abortion, and 4 were lost to follow up. Many women in this study initially had strong negative feelings and fears. Of those who continued their pregnancy, 2/3 developed more positive feelings toward their unborn child as the pregnancy progressed. Their feelings of self-esteem and contentedness improved during the pregnancy, while anxiety, depression, anger, and fear decreased. The abortion rate among rape victims, 50%, is not substantially higher than among all women who report an unintended pregnancy, which is 40%. The majority of those who decided against abortion chose to raise their child, while a small percentage opted for adoption. A study of 164 such women found that the majority of those who had abortions regretted having done so and said the abortion caused them additional problems. By contrast, among those who delivered a child conceived by rape, satisfaction was higher and none stated any regret for having given birth. Abortion, therefore, is not an inevitable choice. The loving support of family, friends, and counselors can make a huge difference. Although relatively small studies in terms of participants, the findings are still interesting to consider. So what do pro-choice Catholics say? I'm going to quote from an article in The Guardian. So Catholics' overwhelming support for abortion is because their faith taught them the values of social justice, of the power of individual conscience, and of religious freedom. Catholic women who participate richly in the life of the Church are having abortions, and they have to hear from an all-male hierarchy that when they choose abortion, they're participating in homicide. That message is profoundly spiritual violent. This is a real pastoral crisis in the Church that Catholics don't want to look at. Every time a high-profile Catholic says, "Even though in spite of my faith I support abortion," it reinforces that stigma. We need to dismantle this narrative. There are 3 important ideas deeply embedded in the Catholic tradition which help fuel Catholics' pro-choice beliefs. The first one is the notion of individual conscience. The Catechism says explicitly, "In all that we say and do, our individual conscience is what tells us what is just and right, not the Church." So even if what our conscience tells us to be just and right conflicts with Church teaching, we have to go with our conscience. The next idea is the tradition of social justice, which contradicts with the profoundly negative impacts that abortion bans have on already marginalized communities. Abortion bans and restrictions disproportionately harm people who are already suffering injustices like racism, poverty, immigration laws, and domestic violence. The very people that we as Catholics are supposed to prioritize, the marginalized, are the ones who have their suffering exacerbated by abortion bans and restrictions. So there is a deep conflict with our social justice tradition. The third, and perhaps the most oft-repeated idea to pro-choice faith leaders is religious pluralism. Catholic teaching supports and respects religious pluralism. And what right-wing Catholics are trying to do is have their theological ideas codified into civil law. By doing that, they're infringing on the religious freedom of everyone else. Our religious freedom guarantees not only our rights to practice our beliefs, but our right to be free of the beliefs of others, and so abortion bans and restrictions take away religious freedom. So we can see there are good arguments on both sides, and we really need to look on how making abortion illegal, though, can impact women's lives, especially minorities, which can exacerbate their life's challenges. So already women are taking risks. There's a new study that found that roughly 7% of women of reproductive age in the US have attempted to induce their own abortions outside the formal healthcare system, up from 5% before Roe versus Wade fell in 2022. So when it comes to pro-choice versus pro-life, I'll be a bit sort of philosophical about it and say that our choices should be life-giving, and we need to consider the implications of keeping a child, the implications of not keeping it, and the effects that abortion can have on our psychology and mental state, both short and long term. Before any decision, best to speak to holistic experts who can share with you the whole picture of what the impact of such an important life decision can have on your life. Yet not all women have the luxury, time, or ability to see and talk to someone. Hence, the root cause of all this has been neglected. There is a lot of debate and arguments about choice or life, but the root cause of both, which is rape, is consistently not addressed. The debaters are always asking, which side are you on? Taking us into extreme duality, that the middle of making choices that are life-giving, that is to create a society where this rape mentality does not exist, has been forgotten. Unfortunately, as with everything that subjugates women, religion has played its role in promoting this rape mentality. In the book Rape, Culture, Gender Violence and Religion, Biblical Perspectives, it is stated, bound within the pages of this sacred text, these articulations of gender violence have accrued significant authority and power across space and time. This power remains undiminished today, not only through the religious teachings and traditions of Judaism and Christianity, but also by way of contemporary social discourses that implicitly or explicitly draw upon the ideologies inherent within biblical texts to justify multiple forms of gender violence. These discourses lie rooted in the foundations of patriarchal culture, constituting part of the framework upon which rape-supportive ideologies and belief systems are built. Such ideologies and belief systems, in turn, create and sustain rape cultures, cultures in which rape and other forms of gender violence are trivialized and normalized, tolerated as acceptable expressions of sexuality. In other words, rape cultures create an environment in which gender violence can flourish, and the Bible, with its myriad traditions about gender violence and its endorsement of the patriarchal discourses that sanction such violence, plays an undeniable role in this process. While it would be inaccurate to claim that the origins of rape culture and gender violence lie exclusively or even predominantly within the biblical traditions, we must nevertheless acknowledge that these texts are by no means blameless, for no literature, particularly sacred literature, is ever value neutral, nor does it leave the reader untouched by the reading process. Rather, all texts invite their audience to embrace certain discourses, values, and belief systems expressed through their authors' rhetorical strategies. Thus, according to feminist theologian Elizabeth Fiorenza, stories are never just descriptive, but always also prescriptive. In other words, biblical texts may reflect the ideologies of the ancient communities in which they are written, but they also have the potential to validate and sanction the same ideologies within communities in which they are read even today. And when these ideologies are rape supportive or endorse the structural violence of gender inequality and patriarchal hegemony, then their power to impact contemporary readers' lives and worldviews cannot be underestimated. We cannot afford to ignore the activity of reading, for it is here that literature is realized in praxis. Literature acts on the world by acting on its readers. So patriarchal religion is part of the root cause of rape culture, and why we need to consider abortion in the first place, making violent sexual actions permissible in society. Hence, feminist theology recognizes this and is asking for a reinterpretation of religious texts as a way to remove these narratives. So one thing you can create in your community perhaps is a consciousness-raising group, or through your women's church, a group to discuss and explore these narratives and see how you may enhance women's awareness around this topic and create change on a grassroots level. Again, thank you for joining me. Please consider subscribing at theologyofher.substack.com. Until next time. How might your life have been different if there was a religion for you? A religion that affirmed you as a woman, as equal to man, and made in the image of God. How might your life have been different? Heretica, her eco-feminist theology educational podcast.